Good afternoon, children. We had started chapter 1 of your history book, What, Where, How, and When. So, we have discussed about like the question which Rashida had in her mind when she was reading the paper, that how come we are aware of or we come to know what had happened 100 years ago. So, we have discussed how we come to know about the past, for example, the houses in which they lived, the life of a hunter, the herders, the rulers, the merchants. Then, where did people live? Where they started living? When was the first time they cultivated rice? We have seen the map of India where we could locate different places like the Kirhar and Suleiman Hills. Then you can locate the place to the which is in the northwest, that is Suleiman and Kirthar Hills. Then uh, you come to know that people started rearing the animals like sheep, goat. You can see the Garo Hills to the northeast and Vindhyas in the central India. So thereafter, we have read or understood that people started their civilization on the banks of rivers. We have discussed why they started living on the bank of river. Then we have talked about why people traveled in those days. We have discussed different reasons, that is for maybe for the livelihood, or some people were fond of or were fascinated by adventure, so they traveled from one place to another. Then merchants traveled with their caravans, carrying their valuable goods from one place to another. Then people, like some men and women, traveled because of the natural disaster which if it has taken place, right? So, and we have discussed, or you can say, uh, why people travel nowadays. Although it was difficult to travel in those days because it was not easy. You could not book a flight and go from one place to another. So obviously, and the areas from from hilly region to plains or vice versa. So it was very difficult. Although nowadays it has become convenient, but one thing is there now, like nowadays people travel again in search of job or livelihoods. So this much we have uh, read in the previous class. Now let's begin. Names of the land. Two of the words we often use for our country are India and Bharat. The word India comes from the Indus, called Sindhu in Sanskrit. Find Iran and Greece in your atlas. The Iranians and the Greeks who came through the northwest about 2500 years ago and were familiar with the Indus called it Hindos or the Indos. So they, you can understand that they have the different pronunciation. So they pronounced Indus as Hindos or Indos, and the land to the east of the river was called India. So the name Bharat was used for a group of people who lived in the northwest, who are mentioned in the Rig Veda, the earliest composition in Sanskrit, dated to about 3500 years ago. Later, it was used for the country. So initially, the name Bharat was used for a group of people. Later on, and this we can find it has been mentioned in Rig Veda, and later on it was used for the whole country as such. Finding out about the past. There are several ways of finding out about the past. One is to search for and read books that were written long ago. These are called manuscripts because they were written by hand. This comes from the Latin word manu, meaning hand. So, manuscript were written by hand, and this word has been taken from Latin manu, which means hand. So, they were usually written on palm leaf or on the specially prepared bark of a tree known as the birch, which grows in the Himalayas. So, manuscripts were written on the palm leaf or maybe on the bark. It is very common, and it is many times it is asked that where it was written. So, it was written on the bark of the birch tree. This tree is found in the Himalayan region. Over the years, many manuscripts were eaten away by insects, some were destroyed, but many, sorry, but many have survived, often preserved in temples and monasteries. These books dealt with all kinds of subjects, religious beliefs and practices, the lives of king, medicine, and science. Besides, there were epics, poems, plays. Many of these were written in Sanskrit, others were in Prakrit, languages used by ordinary people, and Tamil. We can also study inscriptions. These are writings on relatively hard surface. So we can come to know about different things, like how people, because of these manuscripts which have been preserved by the temples and monasteries, they have been written on religious beliefs and practices which was in that done or practiced by people in that era, the lives of the kings, the medicine, the science, and they were epics, poems, and many of these were written in Sanskrit. We can also study inscription. These are writing on relatively hard surfaces such as stone or metal. Sometimes kings got their orders inscribed so that people could see and read and obey them. There are other kinds of inscriptions as well, where men and women, including kings and queens, recorded what they did. For example, kings often kept records of victories in battles. So there were inscriptions, something which was written so that, coming generation can also read about the kings or queens. So you can see that an old inscription dates to about 20 to 50 years ago, was found in Kandahar, present day Afghanistan. It was inscribed on the orders of a ruler named Ashoka. You will read about him in chapter 8. When we write anything, we use script. The script consists of letters or sign. When we read what is written or speak, we use a language. This inscription was inscribed in two different scripts and language, Greek, that was on top, and Aramaic below, which were used in this area. So obviously, if inscription is written in the language which people of that area cannot understand, then it will be of no use. So inscription was done in the language of the people so that they can read and understand. Can you think of the advantages of writing on a hard surface, and what could have been the difficulties? Now, advantage, the manuscript, it was difficult to preserve for a long time. It was eaten by the insect, whereas the hard surface, you don't have to preserve it on the wall or something. Like it will be able to survive. Now, difficulty, manuscript you can carry from one place to another, but these hard surfaces, it would be difficult. So there were many other things that were made and used in the past. Those who study these objects are called archaeologists. The people who are studying this, they, because you cannot make a guess that okay, this I have discovered today and it can be this much. There are people who study them, and then they come to the conclusion that when it was written, which script they have used, and which language they have used, all that. There is the work done by the archaeologist. They study the remains of the buildings made of stone and bricks, paintings and sculpture. They also explore and excavate, that is, they dig, and if they come to know that it's in this area, they can get something related to history. They have the right, and they get the ground excavated, and that the things which they get from those places, they study those things. They explore, excavate, that is, dig under the surface of the earth to find out tools, weapons, pots, pans, ornaments, and coins. Some of these objects may be made of stone, others of bone, baked clay, or metal. Objects that are made of hard, imperishable substances usually survive for a long time. So, this is the advantage, that it can survive, it can be kept for long time. So the things which these archaeologists get from the ground after excavation, they study them. It could be the pot, it could be the utensils, it could be the ornaments, it could be the tools, weapons. All these things were studied by the archaeologist. Okay, children, we will stop here, and please read the chapter, write you, and repeatedly I am telling you, underline the difficult words and what do they mean, because these questions, the questions could be framed on them, which you will be getting in the exam, and it will be difficult to read many chapters together. So it is better when you simultaneously you read the chapter, underline the words, their meanings, and if you have any query, you can discuss in the live class. Thank you, class. Take care of yourselves. Be safe at home.